You guys have- Okay. All right.
When he tells us we're ready, we'll start.
All right. So today's meeting is called to order at 5:35. Look at roll call. I see myself, Kate, Chris, and Janet were all present. So the chair
Yes.
recognizes we have a quorum to proceed. Let's begin with a moment of silence. Now let's move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to this republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. So item number 4, the agenda. Can I get a motion to consider approving the agenda?
So moved.
All right. Motion was made by Janet and seconded by Chris. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Moving on to item number 5, public comment for agenda items. I see we do not have any members of the public present, but as a fun announcement, we will have a very small one at the next meeting. Who would like to make a public comment?
Oh, we'll look forward to that.
She is 9 years old and she is
excellent.
preparing as we speak.
Think you might know her well.
I do. She wants to talk to us, make a public comment about trashbergs.
Okay.
Trashbergs.
Birds?
No, trashbergs, like trash icebergs.
Oh.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
So maybe a little bit of public commentary on littering. No. All right. So item number 6, we're looking for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from our last meeting.
Motion to approve.
Right.
Seconded?
Motion was made by Chris and seconded by Janet. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. So moving on to new business. So item number 7.1, discussion and possible action on Birdtown EAC to partner with Open Connections on the Extraordinary Caterpillar video showing.
All right. Well, this was an opportunity that arose because I went to help a friend who I work with on the advocacy committee for Valley Forge Audubon, who now works at Open Connections. Are you aware of that place, Open Connections? It's on Dorchester Road. They actually have a Newtown Square address. It was a former sheep farm, but was purchased as a 501c3. They now have opportunities for children who are homeschooled to come in on either once a week or multiple days a week. And it is set up where they have groups of kids in multiple ages, like 7 to 9. And they don't really have an agenda, but they do have art and science and literature. And I found it to be an exciting place to go, especially since they just had baby goats born the day before I went. Anyway, Julie, I went because they were doing a bird project, and so that related to me. And then she told me about having the extraordinary caterpillar. So I went to the showing of it with Sydney Mohala, who's also on the Birdtown committee. And at that point, Julie suggested that because they were a school and they purchased the license, which is good for 3 years and can be shown in multiple places, that she would be happy to have Newtown Square be able to use that the showing whenever it is that it fits in for us. And it might be multiple times during 3 years. That's a lot of days that they have it available. So I had, I suggest that we take Julie up on her offer, that we can share with the Extraordinary Caterpillar. And we wanted to make a donation to Open Connections. I think that would be something at the time that we could discuss what it would cost.
So I think to summarize then, they're offering to share the license instead of having to purchase our own, which seems like definitely a win-win. And I know, I think you've also been in touch with them about Garrett Williamson with the viewing.
they could have it
Mhm.
there also, and I think she's opening it up to the people who are on the advocacy committee. Some are from media,
Mhm.
Swarthmore, Nether Province.
Just want to,
Yes,
I just think we need to look at the contract. I just want to make sure what we're doing is legal.
yeah,
Yeah, and so I just want to,
right. I did ask Julie to verify that they can show it in different locations.
They can. I spoke to Homegrown National Park about it originally.
I understand,
Mhm.
but I think I just want to make sure, my concern is not that it's being shown in multiple locations.
Yes.
My concern is if we're showing it and we're not the licensee. Like, in other words, if she's just saying, here, go take and show this, that's, if she comes and shows it here, I don't have a
Well,
problem.
it would have to be a co-branded event. So it would
Okay.
be EAC partnering with Open Connections or
I got
Garrett
you.
Williamson partnershing with Open
Yeah,
Connections. But
okay, that's,
yeah,
Yeah.
as long as it's
My
a co-
library.
Yeah,
Okay, the
exactly. Or
library.
the library. It's
Because
still
libraries get this
exactly.
for no charge. I mean, for 3 years
Mhm.
where usually you purchase it, you can use it once.
Yeah, as long as it's a co-branded event, there's no concern, but we can still get the language for that over to you guys.
okay.
But it makes sense. I mean, they're a great organization already here in
Absolutely.
Newtown Square. No need to purchase 2 licenses. If one
Right.
exists, that can be fairly shared.
Yes, I agree. I was
All
happy
right.
to hear it. And well, she's also opened the
Mhm.
opportunity for us to meet at various times that we
Mhm.
might, not have the option to meet here in Newtown Square
Mhm.
because so much is going on this
Mhm.
site here that we need a place to go. And so she's.
Oh, yeah, so they
opening
could
it.
host several, that makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. We could host them there.
Right, yes, yeah, okay.
Do we need to pass a motion to approve that? Pending review of the wording.
Yeah, I think just let's have
Yeah.
a pending review of the wording and by the solicitor and we'll move forward.
Okay.
All right, pending review it is. And I'll make a little note to myself to follow up on that. All right, so item 7.2, discussion and possible
Well, if
action.
you're making a motion, then you
Oh,
ought to go ahead
gotta
and
make
make
the
the
motion.
motion and.
All right.
have a vote.
I would like to make a motion to approve not purchasing our own license and rather partnering with Open Connections on township audience showings pending approval by the township solicitor on that.
I make the motion.
And a second. All right. Motion was made by myself, seconded by Janet. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. And the motion passes pending review by the township solicitor. Excellent. So item 7.2, discussion and possible action to approve a new date for the sustainability mini conference. Just to summarize, in our last meeting, we discussed that Thursday, September 24th was a conflict for several members of the township. So we looked into the possibility of doing it on Wednesday, September 23rd. That works perfectly well for Garrett Williamson. So all of our ducks in a row, so to speak. So I think we can go ahead and vote on that now as a motion. So I'm going to propose a motion to approve moving the date of the September Sustainability Mini Conference to Wednesday, September 23rd. Same time and details and agenda, just to shift a day early.
I second that.
All right. All right, so motion made by myself, seconded by Chris. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Excellent. Motion passes. All right, so item 7.3, discussion and possible action on the next e-newsletter content. I want to first go ahead and recap. Because of the timing, again, of the submissions, we did discuss at our prior meeting what was
Yes.
going to be on the agenda for May. And we have submitted that. We focused on the Merlin Bird ID, the app itself, the benefit, DCNR, which has 4 or 5 different free native garden design templates with recommended list of plants, and the Pennsylvania Resource Council Lens on Litter photo contest. For those who are listening, it's an opportunity to submit before and after photos of where you've cleaned up trash in your community. And if you submit them, you have a chance to win many prizes from the PRC, including $500. So my 9-year-old at home is actually very excited about this as well. And she has gone out into the township in search of litter and luckily not found as much as we would hope, but certainly encourage
That's
people,
good,
yeah,
actually.
to take it as an opportunity to get up, go out. If you see litter, take a photo, pick up the litter, take another photo, and submit it to the Pennsylvania Resource Council, we'll have that information in the newsletter and also on social media for how to do those submissions. And it's open now. It actually runs from January 1st until the end of October each year, and then they announce them and publicize them fairly widely online. So that's May. Now we can talk a bit about June. I know, Janet, I think you had a couple thoughts of topics for June.
Did, one was, I think we started a conversation about using an invasive plant for each month. We got permission from Heidi Shiver, who's from Doylestown, that prepared the monthly invasive plant, and it is located on our Birdtown website, so I don't see any difficulty in using it. I think we had a conversation with Steve about it, and good to go. Right.
Excellent.
You had an invasive, not plant, but organism, right? Oh, the jumping?
Yes, there has been a little bit of news coverage recently, and this is about the Asian jumping worm that is starting to spread through Pennsylvania. It's not necessarily new information, but it's that kind of year where people start to notice it. So I think that might be a good topic to put in to help people easily identify what is it, how do you differentiate it from a regular earthworm, and then what can you do about it?
Yes.
And also possibly some tips on, for example, like being cautious about if you're buying soil or you're buying plants from someone, making sure that you are not buying those from sources that might risk contamination. So, a lot of times people do like to buy plants or like to buy soil or compost somewhat informally, and that's not necessarily a problem, but you need to be very careful because the eggs from these worms can last a very long time in the soil and not be visible. And once you bring
They
them,
wouldn't identify an egg anyway.
no, it's too small. And once you bring it onto your property, it is next to impossible to fully eliminate them if you do not notice until it's too late, until they've done it. And they are very, very destructive. They will rip up your lawn from top to bottom. Really, no matter what problems you've had with groundhogs and voles, the Asian jumping worm is much worse. So that is definitely a possibility. I also
Sounds
have,
like just like an exciting thing to be
Yeah.
talking about. But
It's
anyway,
nice.
I understand why we need to do it, but it's so exciting.
I think I sent you
Yeah.
one this
Mhm.
morning about indoor cats.
yes.
I thought having your cat be green, right?
Mhm.
Because so I think that I really liked it because it was positive. It didn't talk
Mhm.
about the negative things that cats do, but of course, the reason you want to keep them indoors so they won't kill the birds.
Yes, our domestic cats are actually one of the number
They
one
are. Billion birds a year.
Yeah.
We just don't think of it.
biggest problem invasive species in the area, but there are creative solutions. I think your flyer pointed out a lot of people will build catios, which are cat patios.
Yes, right.
Yeah. They are
So-
pretty,
I've seen
They're
pictures.
pretty
of them. It's
cool.
Cool.
yeah. Find ways you can also, I have seen people put their cats on leashes. I have seen them
Yeah.
run them on run
Right,
lines.
yeah.
There are a lot of very humorous
Right.
and very creative
But they
ways.
don't belong running around
No.
outside. 'Cause,
Mm-mm.
I know people say, oh, well, my cat's not caught a bird, but you know what? They are natural hunters. And
Or my dog have caught a few birds and it breaks my heart, but that
Yeah.
is a harder nut to crack.
it is, right? But then it was pointed out,
Yeah,
dogs have to be on leashes, so why not cats?
this is true. In my yard, and they're limited to the fenced in yard, but one of them is actually quite the huntress rather.
Yes.
She
right.
puts herself into natural hunting blinds but it's only on occasion. I think that's great. I mean, that's already 3 topics. I
Okay.
did, as we move forward, some other thoughts I had are, depending on some of these other topics we talk about today, we might want to also include those.
Right.
Or, for example, we're going to talk about refreshing the EAC website. If it's ready for the next meeting, we might want to include that in the newsletter. Otherwise, we might just push it off to the next one. And at some
Okay.
point down the road, I definitely like to do a deeper dive on deer resistant, like very hardy native species that can stand up to deer browse or that they truly don't eat or have very low browse on, that's not very time sensitive. We can fit that in. I did get a little ahead of myself and already did the slides and everything, but that personal area of interest for mine.
So I have a question for
Mhm.
Steve.
Yes.
I've spoken about how Birdtown has now developed a bird-friendly habitat
Uh-huh.
sign. Is that something that could go in the newsletter? I mean, they are not 501c3. We are a bird town. I would like to be able to think that our residents would have an option of having their yards certified. It is a cost of $30.
Mhm.
It's not, but that's to maintain the system and also to allow for parks, churches, and schools to be able to get a sign without charge.
Right. I think it's one of those things we want to present to the board just to say, is it okay? And you could do that when you do your board town presentation and just, if they give a nod saying, yeah, we're okay with that. I think that would be fine. I just would like them to sign off.
Absolutely. That's why I'm bringing it to your
Yeah.
attention.
Great, excellent. I think that covers June, and I believe we will have enough time before the July meeting
Okay.
to talk about that. All right, so we will cross that off the list. So moving on to item 7.2, discussion and possible action on establishing a marketing.
Point.
Did I skip one? 7.4. Discussion and possible action on establishing a marketing strategy or theme / campaign for the EAC. So the thinking behind this, which I think we might have talked about in past meetings, is it may be beneficial for us as an EAC to come up with both a strategy for how we're going to pick maybe a smaller number of key points or asks we have to different audiences in the township, and use that as like a central campaign moving into the next year. And then also, how do we take those messages and actually, instead of, putting them on social media and then putting them in the newsletter, how do we get them out to a wider audience? Certainly with messaging, if you can pick a smaller number of things to say more often and more broadly, and then use opportunities to dive into those on a regular basis, they're a little bit more likely to stick.
So I went over
Mhm.
this document and it's so flushed out. I really think that you've done an amazing amount of work here. I think we probably have to run this past the supervisors.
Yeah, I think that if
Mhm.
that's what you're wanting to do, I think you just kind of go back and say, this is the direction that we want to head, how we want to do this. I would get what I would suggest is that you sit down with one or two of the supervisors ahead of time, just to get their review on it. I'm trying to remember, is Paul?
Paul is ours, yeah.
I would start with Paul and see what he says, and then he may say, hey, run this by one other person, just
Right.
get a feel, make sure they're okay with it.
I know some townships do, their EACs do have a separate, whatever you call it, where they can post things that are just from the EAC.
It doesn't have to necessarily be separate. This is more of maybe I should call it like less of a campaign and more of a, like, I think it's beneficial if we say, as a resident of the township, what are like 3 things or 5 things you could do in the next year that would make an impact, and just talk about them more consistently. So I think it's a good idea to sit down and have a conversation. It also doesn't have to be overly formal. It doesn't have to be like a big launch or anything. It could also just be guiding, like, hey, what are we talking about in the newsletter? Let's focus on these consistent themes and then dive a little bit more deeply into them.
But I think you're
Yeah.
talking about it being on Patch and other
Maybe.
locations.
This
So
is
that's
more of a
where I think-
laundry. Yeah, this is more of a laundry list of like, where could we put it?
Yes, right.
Absolutely. And I know we've said in the past, anything we approve here that's approved for the newsletter could be shared more widely. I think that's great. I think maybe before sitting down with 1 or 2 supervisors to run it by them, I think it might be a good idea that like we figure out in discussion, like what that might look like. This document had some examples, but they're just examples. What might that mean? Like what we might say to a resident or to maybe a commercial business when we get down towards the sustainability conference, like, these are the 3 things or the 4 things or the 5 things that you could most easily do that would have an impact. We could maybe talk a bit about it today and then maybe talk about it in more depth, so we kind of have a good example. Because I think when we talk with the supervisor, it'd be good to say, hey, these are the actual things that we would be suggesting that we focus on.
I know you mentioned lights out.
Yeah,
Which
definitely.
is actually something that should be extended beyond the migratory period.
Mhm.
For example, our fireflies need those lights
Yeah.
out in order to be able to connect to the males to the females where they're flashing.
Mhm.
And so it's, we're reducing our fireflies,
Mhm.
which is, I think, the state's,
Bird. No.
insect.
Yeah.
Right. And, oh, speaking of that, I saw several flashing fireflies in my trees just 2 nights ago. I think that's that hot time we had when it was 90. It's confused them. They shouldn't be out that yet. It should be a
It's
month
too early. It's
before.
usually June,
It
July,
is.
right?
It is too
Yeah.
early, so I'm upset about that.
Maybe,
Yeah, I saw them actually a week,
Mm.
2 weeks ago.
Really.
Yeah, I was like, this feels
No,
strange.
it is. It's not right. I think they'll find their mates.
I will say because we've spent the last 5 years sort of naturalizing our property, we've gone from like very few lightning bugs to hundreds of them at night. And that's something that there's such a sharp decline in the populations. And as a child, I
Yeah.
remember running around and catching them and having it be very magical. And it's such a noticeable difference in just a couple years. We have huge populations of fireflies. It's like walking outside into twinkling stars.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's right.
Also worth noting, lights out. I mean, it's not saying you can't have outdoor lights on your house, but it's saying turn them off after a certain time. You know, there's
But
a,
of course,
yeah,
fireflies come out in the early evening.
true. Yeah.
But, I think it's just a matter of education.
Yeah.
As to why and it also is affecting moth
Mhm.
as well. We have an opportunity to have a moth night,
Mhm.
given by a
Naturalist?
natural.
Yeah, there's
Yes,
Master Gardeners, Master Watershed, and I think, although not Master Naturalist, I think is not run through Penn State, but it is a good program.
And she's an entomologist and has gone, she had a class with Doug Ptolemy.
Oh,
And so she's reached out about doing a moth night. Go out, she puts up a sheet, see which insects come to visit because it's lighted. And that's an example of how they are drawn to the light, get confused. So you need.
I think at the next meeting, we need to hear more about this, Janet, because
Okay.
I admittedly don't know as much about this beyond the impact on bird migration.
Right.
So it would be great to flesh that out a little bit more in June and just kind of figure out like, what does that ask look like and what would be some of the supporting points? I know another big one for me is, again, not telling people they shouldn't use fertilizer or can never use pesticide, but even just reducing the frequency of the application of fertilizers on your lawns or the type of pesticide application or whether you're doing that can have a drastic impact. I think people don't often realize that fertilization of lawn and other areas, particularly if it's done with chemical fertilizers, so like an NPK solution, actually has really detrimental impacts on the ecology of your soil. And it sounds a little bit like one of those things you read about online, but it really is the case. If you're constantly applying chemical fertilizers to your lawn or to your garden beds, it's actually going to worsen the biology and the quality of your soil over the time to where you do kind of get yourself into this place where you have to keep using them because you don't have a diverse ecology within the soil itself that's actually supporting the health of your soil, right? And similarly with pesticides, in general, we'd like to say no pesticides. There are some exceptions, but it's actually a very broad category,
They're not specific to.
Yes.
mosquitoes.
Yeah. And pesticides, including things like herbicides, because herbicides are actually pesticides.
Right.
But just things like, a lot of people will preemptively treat for grubs every year in their lawn, which isn't necessarily necessary. You can often leave that out, or you can just make a choice like, hey, instead of doing a broad grub treatment, because when you do a broad preemptive treatment of grubs, you're also killing beneficial insect larvae and grubs in your soil, often including things like moths and butterflies as well. Whereas there is, and I'm not going to necessarily recommend it, there is, for example, a grub treatment, I think it's based on like milky spores that only targets Japanese beetles. So there's like a very large world of options for how to make, let's say, like your lawn more sustainable, that is not a black and white. It doesn't have to be 100% naturalized, but it also doesn't have to be 100% always pre-treated with pre-emergent and rub and chemical fertilizers.
We're in a insect decline,
Apocalypse.
apocalypse.
Yeah,
thank you.
apocalypse.
Right, which,
Yeah.
and we need our insects. I
Mhm.
mean, humans need our insects because of the pollinating
Mhm.
that they do. And those pollinators are the greatest transfer of protein from plants to animals
Mhm.
eating.
Yeah, and there could be a couple points in there. Like one of them could be just reducing fertilizer applications. One of them could be, maybe again, these asks like find one way to make your lawn more sustainable. There's a lot of ways to do it. That aren't necessarily going to detract from what you're trying to achieve with your lawn. I think a lot of people don't realize like there are so many options. It doesn't have to be, no lawn. It doesn't have to be perfect, but
Yeah.
there are a lot of small changes you can make.
Which, then I'll finish with this, that I did a
Mhm.
workshop from the gentleman who owns American Meadows.
Mhm.
And his idea is that any space using native plants,
Mhm.
even a container, can be called a mini meadow.
Mhm.
And if you are, so that's a term that I'm going to use for any tabling event, for people to realize it doesn't have to be your whole lawn.
Mhm.
It could be as small as a container, as long as you're using native seeds for the region that you live in,
Mhm.
and plugs or whatever, you can have a mini meadow. I have just a few plants that I purchased, not a whole cluster of
Mhm.
them. And I had a yellow swallowtail or a tiger swallowtail come. How did that butterfly from all the spaces find my little flowers there? I don't know.
I see a lot of swallowtails. I unfortunately don't see a lot of monarchs anymore.
No, that's milkweed for monarch. is what
Yeah.
we have to do, which is what we're going to try to do at Drexel
Mhm.
Lodge Park. Still working on, I think, financing of it. So it's going to be basically a supportive of milk of monk.
Yes, and we should talk about that more. I'd also say I'm still a big proponent of like, I think we can do a lot more education around native trees and shrubs. I think
Yeah.
a lot of times people get turned off of, either maybe they don't know about them, the options, or they get turned off of them because of the intensity of the deer browse. But there is a subset of highly deer resistant natives, and they're maybe not necessarily the natives you see every day, for sale, but a little opportunity to maybe challenge people to like, if not perennials, like one tree can host, the tree I've always wanted to own, a dwarf chinkapin oak. You've probably heard of that from Doug Tallamy.
Yeah.
So there is an oak species that is a dwarf version of an oak that can grow on a fairly small lot. They're not as easy to find commercially, but they can be found, and it supports the same spread of 400 different species that a huge oak would do, and actually grows quite quickly, caps out at about 15 feet, and it starts producing acorns within 5 years. That also may be an exciting township idea down there, but there are a lot of options. Like if you have a small plot, if you have a home and it's mostly lawn, like just adding one tree, adding
Sure.
2 or 3 shrubs could make a huge difference.
I think we should talk with the library, who is
Mhm.
developing a series of talks.
Mhm.
So that if it's something that is happening regularly, they may then get more people.
Yes.
And we could
Yeah.
talk about having one or two of the ideas that are
Mhm.
to educate our residents on important sustainable practices
Mhm.
in our own backyards or front yards, where we can support the life that needs to be
Mhm.
living with us and to
Mhm.
get rid of it.
And I feel like most of these ideas are based off of, homeowners with land,
Yeah.
but we could also expand this to other audiences like businesses, or, find a version of this for HOAs, or a version of this for, people who live in apartments. There's still something you can do with sustainability. But it'd be kind of like a different point of view. Okay, so I think that makes a lot of sense. I think we maybe table this for the next meeting where we try to go in a little bit deeper and try to articulate. We should all spend some time brainstorming, like what might those asks be?
Like the three
Yes.
that we might want to concentrate on. I think three is better than five.
Three, yeah. The problem though is it's really hard to only pick three. But I'm open to only three. Three things would probably be a lot easier to work on. And they can be, I'd like them to be specific enough that they're actionable, but they can also be broad enough that, you know, we could kind of take one of those three things and dive into it with like this newsletter,
For
the
example,
next
if you
newsletter.
said native plants or invasive
Yes.
plants, my goodness,
Yeah.
so you could have 12 different ones because like the invasive.
Speaking of invasive plants, I think a single item could just be, if you do nothing else this year, remove your Japanese barberry. That could be its own
What
thing.
is Japanese?
Japanese
barberry?
Japanese
Start with
barberry
that.
is the Japanese barberry is a relatively compact perennial shrub. It tends to be reddish, but can be
Yes.
green as well. They were very, very popular with landscaping in the 90s and 2000s because they are the most deer-resistant shrub you can imagine. The major issue with them, one is that they are highly invasive. So they do spread and they are unfortunately going into a lot of wild places. The almost larger issue with them is that because they're inaccessible both to birds and deer, and because the structure of the plant forms a very damp and humid microclimate within Japanese barberry, they essentially are tick condos. There is some research out there that suggests that the prevalence of Japanese barberry has significantly contributed to the spread of Lyme disease across the Northeast in the United States, as well as some research showing that if you remove Japanese barberry from a natural area over the course of a number of years, the incidence of Lyme carrying ticks will go down by, I think, as much as 60%.
Mm.
I'll have to bring this back in the next meeting and talk about it in
Sounds like
more
it.
detail. And unfortunately, because they were so popular, they are everywhere. You might not even realize you have one in your yard. They are all over the township. You drive up and down any road in Newtown Square and you're going to see Japanese barberry. And
Like
it,
the calorie pair.
yes, but almost worse because the calorie repair is invasive, but it doesn't harbor a human disease bearing insect. That is, I mean, I think we all know like this is going to be a particularly bad year for ticks. So removing Japanese barberry from your property. I actually don't know if it's on any township property. I would have to go out and look. That would be its own little project. But I mean, yeah, that could be its own ask. And honestly, its own like EAC campaign for a whole year is let's just get rid of the Japanese barberry.
Okay.
And then of course we'd have to find something most likely to replace. And I have a lot of thoughts. I don't agree with a lot of the traditional recommendations for replacements because they are not deer resistant and drought tolerant. And I think we can't recommend things in a township on open property that are not both highly deer resistant and very easy to establish and are drought resistant. And that's what I've done on my own property. And I unfortunately have experimented over the last 5 years with successes and also a lot of failures. So definitely a little bit of learning from that. And I know we should probably move on for
Yes.
time purposes. All right, so we'll have a deeper discussion next meeting about what some of these actions might be. Then probably following the June meeting, we can look at having a conversation with someone on the supervisors. So next topic is 7.5, discussion and possible action on changes to the EAC website.
I think we kind of put 4 and 5 together, don't you think?
I think a little bit, but not entirely. So we have on the EAC website right now, we have 1 or 2 subpages that talk about, for example, Birdtown, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But I agree. I think whatever those asks might be that we want to coalesce around to really push, we should have a little bit more detailed information. I think one of the other challenges I noticed originally in going back over EAC content is that when we publish newsletter articles, over time as they're replaced, the links to the information breaks. So it's no longer available. So if there are topics that are maybe even not part of this, 3 things, but stuff we think is really important that we've published over time, we might want to think about maybe we should have a landing page available somewhere on the EAC page. I mean, I wouldn't do it for everything, but maybe for a smaller number of items. Like I know in a past meeting, we talked about, what are the commercial composting services available? That might be information that instead of just publishing once in the newsletter, we want to have a subpage similar to Birdtown.
So I think that involves talking to whoever puts the content
Mhm.
up on the website.
Yes, Maura handles that for us.
Yes.
And she's actually taken down some that was outdated, but I think we would have to decide, what are those topics and then what is that content?
Right, and we could
Yeah.
ask that it be moved.
Exactly. Yeah. But I think that's definitely worth doing. You know, the topics that come to mind for me are, you know, native plant selections that are deer resistant would be a great kind of permanent topic to have up there. You know, certainly everything we get to with this conversation around the things, I think maybe commercial composting options available to different township residents could be a great one.
Steve, is there, do we track how many people open things?
We have a general
Mhm.
tracking. I don't think it tracks specific, like whether you click on a certain link, it does say whether people go to
Yeah.
a page. Okay, so, but it doesn't,
How many is that, or how many they check the going down, like Parks and Rec and
I get the report. I couldn't, I don't remember if I
is
could
it
tell
in the
you.
thousands, or is it?
Well, I think that the total number of readership is in the thousands, but I don't know that it's that number of people that are clicking on every page.
Also, to be
Or-
fair, I don't think we regularly point people to that page because it doesn't have a lot of content on it.
Right.
But yeah, if there were a couple topics that were important,
Right,
we could start regularly pointing towards the page.
so we can suggest that, but it's really up to the town, how they move forward on.
Well, I think if,
Like,
no, I
yeah.
think that if you come back and say, here are the things that we're
Mhm.
interested on our page. You know, as long as they're within what we think is, you know, what the township's focus is on. I think we'd be glad to do that. So I mean, I think it can be a little bit, I don't think it's us picking your content. I think it's you picking the content that you're hoping to have on there. And you don't have to be limited to just one page. We can actually embed pages deeper. You know, if you want to have your main page, I'm a person who likes to have my main page stay pretty small with links going back, and then that be where the detail is.
Right.
Not everybody feels that way. That's just, I've asked that most of our website be set up that way. Because I'm a person who gets to a page, and if you make me go down and down and down and down and down, I'll probably never get to the bottom. And so I'm one of those who, if I can stay within 2 scrolls, I'm more likely to.
Something that grabs your attention, and then they could go
Exactly.
to.
And not
So
necessarily.
that's why I said
yeah.
the link idea,
Yes.
we would do that and make sure it works for you.
And not necessarily a lot of topics. I'd say it's more like, we don't want to just like post a bunch of stuff that's already out there. I think it's more topics that we would want to publish, like through our newsletter, where we want that information to stay available, whereas it's going to otherwise fall off. So something like composting, you know, there isn't necessarily like a list somewhere of like, hey, if I live in an apartment or a house, like what are my options for composting and what are all the companies that would potentially service the township? You know, good example, you have a page for Birdtown, which is great. Yeah, maybe like,
I'm all in favor of. this,
Yeah.
and if we have to vote on it now, I mean, you know, we would like to
Yeah.
expand our page and have.
we necessarily need to vote on expanding. I think we need to just decide what are the topics. Like if there's
Okay.
one or two we feel right now, I would be happy to kind of draft content to review at the next meeting.
Good.
Would
If-
you rotate them? In the sense of like seasons?
No, I kind of think of it as more, because again, like how much traffic does the webpage get? I think it's more just like evergreen content. You know, are there like 2 or 3 topics, like we said, like what do we think are the best deer resistant natives for different sites that, and I'll tell you like that specific bucket of like highly deer resistant native perennial shrubs and trees that would do well in our township. That doesn't really exist as a standalone resource anywhere because you're drawing on many different resources. Again, like, you know, I think composting is a good one, you know, eventually, if we have, you know, sort of these 3 things for the township, that would be a great subpage. So nothing crazy.
Mhm.
You know, we could start with that or just, you know, naturalizing your yard, just simple things like that.
Like the plant one?
Yeah.
Everyone's old.
Naturalizing your yard, it sounds.
I may have already written a handout and a presentation for it, but I do this as a personal hobby. So maybe so maybe that's kind of 3 topics, right? We've got composting, certainly the Birdtown page is already there.
So when you
Mhm.
say naturalizing your yard, as someone who has a large yard, I think would already say, oh my God. I
It's a
can't do
lot.
this." But if
Yeah.
you say, take something the size of your dining room table on an annual basis and just work with that
Yeah.
area and then choose another.
Yeah,
Then I think people say, well, yeah, maybe I could do that, or a
Yeah.
small dining room table, or a container.
and that is a real topic we should actually have with the library, because I mean, Janet, you actually came to my house this week and I
I
gave you a whole
did.
tour, so you've seen at my
And I was
property.
Impressed.
5 years in, I've gone from 100% invasive to maybe like 70% invasive, so, and it's,
Still that many, huh?
no, it's maybe 50-50, but it's incremental, planting 2 or 3 trees and reducing your use of chemical fertilizers is meaningful
Yeah.
towards naturalizing your yard. Adding a single butterfly garden is meaningful.
Absolutely.
All those things.
And getting a sign in your yard
Yes.
that says your bird
Yeah,
habitat.
exactly. That's meaningful. So that could certainly be a topic. And then what else did we say?
Danny, you bring up a good point though,
Yeah.
practicality,
Yeah,
where if the people that have these massive properties and stuff, they'll probably just really be like, wow, I really have to do this for 1 acre or 2 acres or whatever it is. I think you just have to keep it in perspective.
So
Yeah.
the state was giving away kits
Mhm.
for meadows. They said it was sold out. They had 300.
they had 300.
Sold out like in 5 minutes.
Yeah,
So people are really interested in doing this, and they hopefully they'll say, wow, we should do more of it.
which in and of itself might be an idea we should talk about in the next topic. So what we said, composting, naturalizing your yard, deer resistant plants. I have a lot of thoughts on deer resistant natives that I have been able to purchase locally and allow to thrive in peace with the deer. They really don't like strong odors and fuzzy leaf textures. So maybe I'll work on those 3 for the next meeting. We can talk about that. And just
Okay.
kind of, again, none of these have to be like big launches. We can just kind of add as we go. Great. So let's move on then to item 7.6. Let's get a quick time check. How are we on time? We're not great on time. Okay, understood. We might not get to all these. We got to get to the Delaware County sustainability topics
Okay,
eventually,
okay.
but I actually, do you want to table item 7.6 and move on so we wrap out the meeting? Because that's kind of a longer conversation. We published some ideas. These are just ideas out there for us to discuss and agree on. Hey, do we want to pursue a couple of these to plan forward for the next year? So let's table that for now. Item 7.7, discuss feedback from EAC community engagement and events since the last meeting. Janet, I'm sure
So
you have
did
some
the
thoughts.
library
Mhm.
run and I get the first words of it.
Oh,
Once upon a run.
Once upon a run.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
So we did tabling there. You and I shared a table. I thought fortunately the weather,
Mhm.
it didn't rain. It was a little chilly, but it was a great start. I thought to something that perhaps
Mhm.
to have the library. I'm really impressed with what the library is on. And it is such a center for people to come together. Really, it's working amazingly well. I worked with Angela on the distribution of those little tree giveaways.
Oh, tell us for the kids,
Ye-
right?
Yes, neighborhood trees for kids. I was, she was going to order 25, but when she sent out the announcement, 113 people said they would like these trees. When they came in, these were just little seedlings, and they were making aspen. I don't think is best for this area, but that's what they sent us. And in researching how to or where to put a aspen, it's like not too close to your house. Because it
Yeah.
can grow deep root, far out spreading roots. Don't want them into your.
Mhm.
So we made that suggestion to picking up
Mhm.
away from their house. But I was impressed
Mhm.
that order that many. I have some of those little seedlings still at my house because I took the extras that were out on the pack. Perhaps we will do it again next year. Different tree.
Yes, I think there's a big opportunity for small, compact, highly ecologically beneficial deer resistant trees in the township to focus on those or look at doing maybe a giveaway in the future. I'm gonna harp on the dwarf chinkapin oak because it is hard, a little bit hard to source, but very doable. George and I had a nice conversation about our love of trees. Also to give shout out to Parks and Rec and George for putting together their Arbor Day event, which we did some handouts for,
Yeah,
and they gave away
Right.
100 trees in the township, primarily red buds and also some London planes, all of which I believe were grown on the
They
township
were.
property.
From the tree that's there on
Mhm.
site, right. I
Excellent.
have some tabling events that are coming up. One is for the booked for the farmer's market on.
Oh, that is opening
August
soon.
Yes, it is
Mm.
in June. August the 7th. And wherever I table, you want to EAC
Mhm.
table with me, that's.
Yeah,
fine.
whenever
We'll
I
tell
can.
EAC together. I'm going to help media with a tabling event, 5:30, 5:30. In thinking about how that impacts what Birdtown has done for here. We get credit when we work with
Mhm.
partners.
Awesome.
Yes.
How are we doing on time?
20.
Ah, it was only 20. All right, we get to hit 7.8. So review key takeaways from the Delaware County Sustainability Conference. This hopefully will be a recurring item where we go back into March and talk in a bit more detail about some of the key takeaways that we learned about. And I believe this week we were going to talk about data centers. Unless you have another topic you'd like to cover.
Oh, well, I can, when you're ready.
Yes, absolutely.
The little green wagon,
Mhm.
I think perhaps you had to leave before that.
No, I saw the green wagon.
Did you?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, right. So Julie Smith, who I've
Mhm.
spoken about from Open Connections, she's the one who started the little green wagon. And they got old wagons that were like, red
Mhm.
and painted them green. And then they park these in neighborhoods with native plants on them.
Mhm.
For the residents who are walking past, that they can take a plant home.
Mhm.
They've now grown to, this is in media, so they now have grown to 6 different wagons that they take around. And that Julie said, she was happy to see it's spreading to other communities, and so maybe we can get a green wagon going.
I think it's a fun idea, and I have a recommendation for what that plant can be, and it is definitely golden ragwort. Our pollinator garden here at the township building is incredibly successful, but so golden ragwort, which is Pachyra aurea, is my #1 favorite native plant of all time. It is gorgeous, deer resistant, evergreen, and highly aggressive. It's not something you want to plant in a very tiny managed bed for the purpose of naturalization and actually competition against lesser celandine. It is pretty stellar. And the pollinator garden is currently overrun. I removed 50 plants this spring and I have replanted them at my home in a propagation bed for a, hopefully future giveaway. But Cindy, I believe, is coming back this week to give away some and remove some. We really have an almost indefinite supply of them here from the township building, and knock on wood, hopefully eventual mini propagation beds in different locations. So I feel pretty strongly that we could fund and do that. Certainly, we should add that to our list of long-term opportunities to consider. I think they said the average cost, even with them buying plants, was only like $200 or $300 per wagon for the year. And if we are propagating them, that would be significantly lower. People certainly grow them,
right.
donations. Also, there is a wonderful perennial wholesaler up in Oxford that if you show up, they have $1 plants on their rummage rack all throughout the summer. And I mean, to be fair, we'll talk about next meeting, we do have a good chunk of money left that we can look at spending this year.
And we've saved some extraordinary kind of.
Yes, we have. I think we have about $1,500. We certainly would want to set aside maybe a third of that for the sustainability conference. But when we talk about these, potential opportunities, like there is definitely a lot of space to play, and there's a lot of ways to do things very inexpensively.
Good.
Again, hard-learned lessons. Spent a lot of time on money and things that didn't work, but have found the things that did.
What was the name of that fund again?
Golden Ragwort. It actually really needs a rebranding. It is
A
the
nicer
worst.
name, right?
I've seen it marketed
Rag,
as
yeah.
golden
Wart.
groundsel,
Mhm.
which is really not much better.
And what is its Latin name?
Pacera
Yes.
aurea, Aurea. Pacera, like Packera. So you saw at my house, if you ever driven actually by Jenkins Arboretum, you see a sea of yellow in the spring, and that's the plant. If you drive by my house, you'll see a sea of yellow because it is naturalizing the front of my marsh. And if you drive by the township building right now, you'll see a sea of yellow. It is the most cost-effective native plant ever, but it is not for small managed spaces. It does not play nice with others.
Well, nor does lesser celadon.
It is, in fact, the only native ground cover perennial that can compete against lesser celandine. It will not necessarily overtake it, but if you strategically remove the celandine and put ragwort in, it will hold it back. That's something I'm working on at my house.
Is it a pollinator plant?
It is. It's
Okay.
actually a really good source of because it blooms very,
Well,
very
early
early in the
rains,
season.
so-
So for bees and
Yes,
insects, it's an
right.
early season pollinator. I really think it belongs everywhere. I think the answer to half the questions on the internet are golden ragwort. And I mean, the whole township could be yellow a couple years from now, Steve.
Yes.
Anywhere you let me put it, I will
Call it gold.
put it,
Because we are
yeah.
a gold township.
going for gold. Maybe we need a signature
A flag,
Newtown
yes.
Township ground cover perennial. We kind of already have some
We
signature
could target
trees.
the Meadow Preserve
Yeah.
as places that, I mean, we need to start. And
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
if we just did, if we just did the concept of, a bed
Yeah,
every year and allow it
Even-
to spread out.
I didn't even think about the meadow preserve, like
But-
these.
Burn it.
We want to, we have not yet.
Yes, right.
Mhm.
I know it's not.
But I mean, it
You
might
know,
be one of those things. We could burn one section and come
Yes.
back and plant the next season with that and
Yeah, it's
be
a-
an option.
actually, the meadow preserve is something we should think about long-term too, because we certainly could organize some
We need the
volunteering.
money. Grant would be great.
So there are I have a list of grants as well.
Saw that, too.
I will say though,
Amazing.
I think people will be surprised, depending on your plant selection, I put together like a little, and we'll talk about it at the next meeting, a little plan for like, what could we do with the landscaping on this side of the township building? It would have to be discussed and approved, but couple $100 max. I'm propagating a couple dozen plants right now that could be used. Depending on the plants you pick, and if you do them particularly with landscape logs, I mean, wholesale, those are $1.50 each, and off the rummage rack, they're only $1. So there's a lot you can do with that on a pretty small budget. But yeah, and then if we can grow more in the township and keep planting and returning, maybe we can do some invasive removal over there.
There's a lot of it.
I have to admit, I have not been in the Meadow Preserve in quite some time, and I think they're also working, if I'm not correct, on stabilizing the parking situation over there to make it a little more visitor friendly. But gosh, I didn't even think about the Meadow Preserve. That could be its own series of projects.
Yeah. Let's get the goats out. They chew up the
They
weed.
eat everything though. They
They
will eat
do.
everything.
Well, now's the time
Yeah.
for them to eat it because we don't have anything in it that we want to keep.
Oh, really?
Meadow Preserve could probably be,
A whole project?
The Meadow Preserve could be a really great opportunity to
Yeah.
keep the goats alive for a while.
And you can rent out goats.
Yeah,
You can. The
Bring
only
them in.
The only problem with goats, I will be honest, I have tried to rent goats. They were actually quite difficult to find for this area. I tried that a
Do they
couple
get
years
to
ago. No, there aren't as many available in this area, and most of the programs are really targeted at golf courses.
mhm.
They use them on golf courses to manage the peripheries, and they're not really set up for residential hire, although that would be a great business opportunity. But the only problem with that is they will eat them to the ground, but they don't touch the roots. And so the invasives will
Okay.
regrow unless it's something that they pull out quite easily. So it's a good short-term option, but it's not going to remove like wineberry from the Meadow Preserve. Maybe we need to go over and take a look at the Meadow Preserve. I've seen it many times, but we have to talk to probably Parks and Rec about that well. That would take a lot of plants, but we could do it. There are a lot of grants. I mean, I would really like to get some experience writing grants.
We would welcome.
Yeah, but that is, to be honest, the Meadow Preserve is a large
Yes, yes,
project.
it is.
That would be a lot of conversations. I don't know if there's anything worth keeping. That is one approach. If there is nothing worth keeping,
Well, there is milkweed in there.
yeah, if there's nothing worth keeping, it's actually easier than trying
Sure.
to, it is easier to restart a meadow than to tackle a meadow that has even like 50 or 60% invasives. Just tactically, it's easier because then, well, I could talk for a long time about meadow, but we're kind of running out of time. They're easier to restart from scratch than they are to fix, depending on the scope of what's in there.
You know, it's a cloggle.
I know. Okay, so we are about time, but we could talk about.
It's hard to read sometimes.
Yeah. Meadows are also, tricky. In meadows, actually meadow establishment, we can talk about in the future, is a really good example of why there is a role in conservation for herbicide, but that the herbicide use is specific and targeted and
Yes.
limited in duration. Because you really can't do large scale
Which is
meadow
what I think
establishment.
Thinking of doing.
That's a large part. Yeah.
Targeted, not full.
Wrote a proposal for that as well. We will share it. That I think is actually something we'll need to talk about as well, because I did have an outreach to me from the folks about that to ask, like, could the EAC potentially take this on as a partner?
So, it has to go through
Yeah,
Parks and Rec.
exactly,
Because
yeah.
it is a park,
Mhm.
right? And so Wade, I had conversations with Wade.
Yeah, I know Newtown
That's
Square
part.
and Bloom though is interested in having us.
Yes.
Yeah, so they did ask me to write up something, which maybe we can talk about next time, but I think there's a few ways to approach it and it's highly dependent on it, but there are several grants available that
Good.
we could apply for. There's one in particular, I think it's the DCNR mini grant or Delaware County mini grant, where the timing, it's a smaller cap of money, but there is another submission in October or in August for the end of October. So that could be a future spring project. A lot of rest of these grants we'll talk about, most of them have winter and spring deadlines. We kind of missed the boat for 26, but could apply for 27.
So is that going to be on the agenda for next?
Yes, so in this week's agenda, there was a 2-pager. We should add some things to it, opportunities to discuss. It's a laundry list of things that we would have to pick and choose from, because it is
Sure.
certainly not all things we could tackle. And then there is a document,
If it
grants and
requires
funding,
The township.
all of
to-
them, certainly, I'd say, yeah.
Well, if they have to,
If there's if there
Getting
would
the
be an
money.
ask for funds, yes. A lot of these grants, though, are pretty achievable. I think, there's an item we talk about next time. I'd love to see maybe the township consider, like, could we do an annual fall tree giveaway? That's like a signature township event that would require an ask for funds, which we'd have to sort out, in 26 for 27, so on and so forth. But there's creative ways to do everything.
good.
I can talk about plants a lot. So I think now is probably a good time to move on to items for the next agenda. Everything we didn't get to today. Let's see. At some point, we want to talk weed ordinances and native landscaping. We need to talk faster next week. So item 11, public comment. There are no members of the public. So then we will move on to item 12, adjournment. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting adjourned for today.
Ju-
Did I skip
Just
something?
no, you're fine.
Oh.
Just for my clarification, 7.8, you want to keep on because you're going to talk about a different topic each time you meet, kind of thing.
What was 7.8?
7.8 is your,
The green-
is your sustainability,
The green wagon.
the
But
Delaware County
there's-
Sustainability Conference.
Yes,
So we'll
yeah.
Pick another one next.
Yeah, I had prepped one for data centers as well. Maybe next time we'll talk about data centers. The good news there being, there really isn't anywhere in Newtown Square for a data center. But it's still, it would have to be a micro data center, right? That we are not the kind of township, to be honest, that are targeted for data centers anyway. But I still
But
think
we
it's,
want to be prepared.
yes, well, I think it's also just a good share out to, I think a lot of people are hearing about data centers, but they don't know a lot about why people are so upset about the environmental and quality of life impacts of closely resided data centers.
There.
There you go.
All right,
That's a meeting.
good, thank you. You didn't use your
Gavel.
gavel.
Now